All right. Welcome, everyone, to Skribble's first ever API webinar. So we heard a lot of feedback from you guys that you want an interactive API format to stay informed about what's going on and to ask questions directly. And this is what we're going to do today. So thank you very much for joining. We're very excited to have you all here today. So before we start, I would like to introduce who's here in the call with me today. Joining are Waldemar. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Skribble and co-founder of Skribble. We do have Freddy Kaiser, who is the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Skribble, and Fabian Böhm from SPB, who will speak about a concrete implementation today in this session. My name is David. I'm also one of the co-founders of Skribble and the Chief Product Officer, and I will be moderating the session today. We also have Antonio Lina in the call, who will assist with the chat, and they will provide clarifications as needed. And Simeon is here to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And here are the topics of today. So first, I will talk about our API-first approach. Then Waldemar will present our new API and capabilities. And after that, Freddy and Fabian, they will showcase a concrete use case involving SPB and how SPB used Microsoft Power Automate to integrate with Skribble. You will have the opportunity to ask questions in the chat, and we will address them after each session. So don't wait until the very end of this webinar. We'll make sure that we move on if time runs out, so we stay on time, but there will be another opportunity. You see it in point 4 here at the very end of the today's webinar to ask questions. All right. So let's start with API first approach. I quickly want to talk about the Skribble product principles, and we do have 3 of those. So we have workflows, API first, and great user experience. And we at Skribble believe that we simplified the actual digital signing process and combined it with a more accessible user experience. And that's something that we believed was not often the case. Often tools were feeling too technical. But over the years, this value has shifted. And today we think that the value lies not just in the signature itself, but it lies more and more in the processes around it. And these processes include many, many different things that we all already offer today and that we will continue to offer in the future. So for example, the tracking of status of signature requests, roles and permissions, expiration date, signature sequences, placing multiple visual signatures, etc. And these functions, they're designed to be easy to use and help everyone at your company become more efficient. And we call these functions workflows. Let's talk about the API first approach. Here at Skribble, we strive to make the best decisions for the collective of our users to ensure that the product can keep growing without becoming an unusable and complex tool. And we do recognize that sometimes these decisions, they may not perfectly align with a very specific use case that you might encounter. And for these cases, our API gives you the freedom to create a very customized interface or UI, or attach customized functions on top of ours. So one example I can make is for this example of having a contract to sign with different signature standards. This is a rather uncommon example, and only a few customers encountered this, but the majority of our customers don't face it, so that's why we don't have it as a function in our user interface. And how you could still achieve this result, basically, and how you would do that today in the UI is that you upload the document, you would invite the first person to sign with a yes, then you download the document, re-upload it, create the second signature invitation, invite the person to sign with a qualified electronic signature, and then download the final document that has now an advanced and a qualified signature on the document. And with the API, you can basically process this sequential flow and automate the steps in between that you have to take manually at this point. So this kind of flexibility enables you to handle very complex processes much more efficiently. And we're going to see another example presented by Fabian today in the webinar that showcases how the API is very powerful. So that's my last slide. I think it sometimes helps. I mean, there's lots of experts here in the call, obviously, but it sometimes helps for people that are not as don't have as much knowledge about the API to think about it as a very own highly skilled professional assistant that basically never sleeps. And you can imagine this assistant taking care of your files, responding to emails, setting up meetings, and making coffee all the time for you. So while a human would need a lot more time to do these things, the API is able to handle these tasks in seconds and without a single coffee break, obviously. So it's like having your own super efficient multitasking robot at your disposal. So this was it for the first section. I will not pause for questions here. We will have the first session of questions after Waldemar's talk, who will now speak about the API and its capabilities. So Waldemar, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, David. So my name is Waldemar. I'm currently the CTO of Skribble. And my responsibility is the API is one of my responsibilities. So we started with API version 1 a long time ago, 6 years ago, and it came a long way. And we switched internally to API version 2 in the last year. And now we published the API version 2 since yesterday. It's online. You see the documentation in the Postman at Postman, where we have Postman suites where you immediately can try out whatever we built there. So they're good examples and a good starting point. The API version 2 has a lot of new features, and if you want to take advantage of these, please switch to it. The migration effort is actually minimal. So some highlights is like we simplified adding and removing signers, which was not that easy in version 2. In version 1, we added the signing sequence to it and the possibility to have multiple visual representations of the signature per real encrypted signature, right? One other thing is, for example, which the web application doesn't use, is if you can switch ownership of the signature invitation. That makes integration to third-party apps like contract management systems easier, where you say, okay, the API provides the document, but afterwards, a person or your employee is responsible to change or adapt the flow on the web application. It's now easily doable by changing the ownership of a signature invitation. And there's much more, so you're happy to explore the API documentation on Postman. With that, we will phase out version 1, but not urgent. So they're mostly compatible, so the changes are not big. You can even switch right now, work with both of them. So having one version 1 request and one version 2 request, it's all fine. As said, the actual migration effort is minimal. You change the base URL. There's one significant field which should be renamed. Other fields are deprecated but still can be used. And one thing is, now you have to provide an array of signature positions if you pre-place it via API. One thing, just ignore the all unknown fields which you don't need or use, and you are done actually with the migration. Some customers are already using API version 2, and the migration took them 1 or 2 days. Next slide, please. So then we have a second API, the document validation API. has its own URL, and it has a nice open API schema there, which you can use. It's public. You can use it, start validating your document you receive from third parties or even Skribble ones, whatever, to see how they're legally qualified. And we will move that one day into the main API, but right now it's a standalone product, but with the same API keys. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the API version 2 is more of a slight evolution, not a revolution, right? So we constantly add new features to that, like we developed the Skribble web application, new features for that. We said that the Skribble web application is a first-class citizen, so it is just a regular user of this API, the one we publicly have published for everyone else to use. So you can build the complete Skribble web application actually on your own using the API version 2. There are some protected endpoints like the sign process itself or challenge validation endpoints. That's more to legal requirements, and but they're open actually for everyone to use after they talk to us, where we check that you fulfill the legal requirements, like presenting the user the document and giving him a signed copy after the signature process is done. We have even more capability to enable flows which are not used in our web Skribble application. Yes, Skribble web application, where you just, again, if it's possible to skip maybe a second factor authentication or streamline some user flows, which are then interactive between your integration and ours. So we are actually happy to support you in a deep integration, whatever scenario you have. We like to get to know to it, maybe suggest how it's technical built, and inform you about some legal considerations, maybe when you need which qualities or which challenge to verify. So we'd like to know what you plan with your integrations, and happy here to support. Next slide, please. So the API version 2 is constantly evolving, like the web application too. What should never change is the behavior, except when we need to change it due to legal or security requirements, which in the past almost never happened. So the behavior will stay the same, but what will be added is in the JSON documents we surface, the interface, we can add fields which then which will implement a new feature. So if you integrate it, the suggestion is not to do a hard schema validation here, but just ignore the fields, which will be step-by-step added to our API. One common request is, do you have an open API schema so we can generate an SDK on our side with our programming language we need? And sadly, we don't have that. We had that in the past, but through the migration to the API version 2, where we do a lot of inheritance, we solved it with inheritance to stay compatible with version 1. That conflicts with our tool which generates the API schema. So we're thinking about creating one manually, but that not on short notice. Right? So next slide, please. So when we started with version 1, we had wonderful error messages, but sadly, error messages got very vague in the past, and that is by design. The error messages are a good source of information leakage and are often flagged in our penetration dates if we give the users too much information. This is From a developer perspective, that's not good news, but from a stability and security perspective, that is good news. So if you get stuck anywhere, please ask for support. We help you what happened. We can debug your integrations, check what actually failed, and give you the information on a personal level. The other reason there is some vague error messages, our web application firewall, which checks all requests which are sent to the API before it reaches the API. So if you have like a document with a title which looks like an SQL injection, it will be rejected. So, and there you won't see much the reason why it was rejected. So you will just be blocked, get an error message. And again, if you get stuck there, happy to support, tell you, hey, please use this encoding or this, you have some fragments in there which are not compatible to a PDF document normally, right? So that can happen. One next slide, please. So the API is advancing fast, and we constantly update it. Like yesterday, we had a release where there's a new signature format for the part FDA Part 11 compatible signature. So to stay in touch and to see how the Skribble evolves, I would suggest subscribing to our status page to see what's going on, what releases are there, are we in a maintenance window, is everything working? There you can subscribe, you get notifications through different channels, and we are just checking if we can use that channel for future release notes. A different source of information more on the individual level is our Google group and mailing lists. It is quite new. So you can look at past messages and discussions in the Google groups, where you find the link in the below. And if you want us to have questions, ask there on the email public-API-users Skribble.com, which will reach our engineers, and there we can discuss individual flows or problems or suggestions how to improve something. So that's our API version 2 in very short, and I'm happy to answer questions if there are something.
Yeah, so I thank you very much, Waldemar. I think there are no questions in the comment section so far. So if you have questions, post your questions please in the comment section, because then we can pin it onto the screen, because you don't have a voice in this chat. And if you have no questions, amazing. First time this ever happened, I think, in a webinar. So either it's super clear or you didn't know how to pose questions. So feel free to ask questions. We will continue at this point since there aren't any. And we will have a second session of questions after the next block. And you can also post questions to Waldemar's part, obviously, now in the chat, and we will pick them up later. So with that, let's move on to the use case. So Freddy from Skribble and Fabian from SBB will talk about a very specific use case. Freddy, the stage is yours.
Yeah, hi, and welcome from my side. So I'm Freddy, driving key initiatives here at Skribble, but also helping customers and partners like you to integrate Skribble into their system and their processes. But we have seen how powerful our API is. Basically, it serves as a basis for all our integration we have done with Microsoft, Google, SAP, and many other specialized industry solutions here. The Skribble API itself works really easy and can be integrated with any programming language, but also the no-code platforms, especially the Zapier one. So with Zapier, which is great, it has over 7,000 out-of-the-box integration you can use, including the Skribble one, but you can easily build a solution or process with it. And I think we didn't mention any AI today, so I think it's also a good time for it. So our API is publicly available on the internet, so also to them, so this AI. So by simply using ChatGPT or Copilot, it will generate your integration code, or at least you can get a good starting point with it. Mentioning the no-code area, so Microsoft also has a platform on this one with the Power Apps and Power Automate. And for this, Fabian from SBB will present a real use case by really using this platform and the Skribble API. Fabian, stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Freddie. And hi, everyone from my side. I'm Fabian Böhm, working for SBB, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to present our use case in this webinar. I will start right away. On the next slide, there's a quick overview over my agenda. So first of all, I will introduce the use case that we have at SBB for the Skribble API, and we use the Microsoft Power Platform, which consists of the Power Apps and the Power Automate framework. I will introduce them afterwards and then talk about our actual integration of the Skribble API into the application. In the end, there's a short outlook on our next steps on this journey, and then I'm happy to answer your questions. So next slide, please. Our use case where we integrated the Skribble API is the process automation of the auditing of project portfolios. We have railway experts which do large portfolio auditing before infrastructure projects are built. And in the end of this audit process, they need to sign the verification reports. And these highly skilled professionals' administration efforts should be reduced to a very minimum so they can focus on the actual auditing work. We are developing a Microsoft Power App, which automates a lot of the documentation of the whole verification process. And we really try to do everything on this platform to reduce media discontinuity, which costs a lot of time and effort in the past for our experts. We use Power Automate flows in the background of the Power App, which run routine administration tasks and handle database concerns. And also the Skribble API, which I will talk about later, is accessed using a custom-made Power Automate flow in our application. So let's start right away with the Power Apps. The Microsoft Power Apps are web apps, so you access them always through your internet browser. And these are just the graphical user interfaces. There are different approaches. Right here, you see a model-driven app where each entry, each line stands for one entry in the database. In our application, each entry is one audit portfolio. So if the experts click on it, they will see a lot of metadata for the audit. And also, in the end, when the audit is done, they can go onto this entry, and there will be the interface which initiates the signature request, which calls the Skribble API in the background. So Power Apps is just the web front end for the whole application. Next slide, please. In the background, there are Microsoft Power Automate flows running. Power Automate is a visual block programming framework, which you can also access through your browser. And there are different blocks which run sequentially, so from top to the bottom. And you just add them there. There are a lot of standard blocks like conditions, loops, initiating and setting variables, and also blocks like sending an HTTP request. These all are built in and ready to go. And there are also blocks which integrate third-party software. For example, if you want to access data from Snowflake, or if you want to use very advanced PDF functions from Adobe, you can also add blocks to your flow, which have input and output data. And these blocks basically work as black boxes where you only can adjust some parameters. So it's very easy to start building flows, and you don't need a lot of programming knowledge to do so. These flows can be triggered by different events. First of all, database changes. So if you make a new entry or if you change some fields in some entries, these flows can be triggered. We also have scheduled flows, which run like weekly or monthly or every day. And last but not least, it is also possible to wait for a certain user interaction to trigger a flow. So after this short introduction to the Power Platform of Microsoft, I would go on the next slide, please. And this is another screenshot of our application. It is in German, so I put red boxes in English explaining what's happening. Again, our goal is to minimize the time the experts spend on administrative work. So most of the fields in this form are pre-filled because the data is already present in our database. For example, which signers are involved in the current audit, how is the title of the document, there's a standard message to the signers. And the only thing the experts need to do here is to paste the link to a SharePoint PDF file, which is the document that shall be used. And in the end, they have to confirm manually in the bottom left corner, there's a checkbox where they say, okay, everything is fine, the information is correct, and I am allowed to, or I'm authorized to start the signature request, because we have quite a strict process which defines who can start signature request with Skribble. So in the end, there's a button at the bottom of this page, which is pressed by the users. Again, this whole page is integrated into one entry of the Power App, which I showed before. So the experts press the button, and the next thing that will be visible to them is an email from Skribble, which is just the invitation to sign the document. So from that point, after pressing the buttons, the different experts who are involved on this audit will get an email inviting them to sign the document at Skribble. And from this point, they just have to log into the website, do the verification of their identity, and then they sign the document. I think that's all for the application as it is right now. So the roadmap with the next steps. We have some final adjustments to do before we can do the go live in production environment. Right now, the Skribble part of the app is just running on our development server. And there are some small things which also have to do with the handling of user secrets we have to discuss before going live. Also, next step would be to retrieve and process the signed document automatically via the Skribble API callback. So after everyone signed the document, we can download it automatically, put it in our database, send a notification to the people who are interested in the document. This is not implemented yet, but it's an idea. And finally, we would really like to supervise the usage of our API access, because we are a very large company with a lot of different teams and many people, and we want to make sure that the automated access to the Skribble API is used as we designed it, and there's no misusage or there are no problems when we have the whole app running in production. So that's it. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. I am open to any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Fabian, for your presentation and insights. Before handing over, I have some questions already for you. Let me start with one: is what challenges did you face by developing this integration, and how did you overcome them?
So first of all, we were using Skribble already with the manual process, so everyone was using the web interface from Skribble. And when we got started, we started to work with sending the request through the network console of our browser, which is very manual work and takes a lot of effort. And we quickly learned about the Postman collection that Skribble provides. And this made things very, very fast, very easy. So there are the prepared HTTP requests, which you can send for the different commands to the API. And it was very handy to try things out and to work with it. And this was not a challenge then to finally come to the point which we wanted to do. We had another challenge when we tried to use the callback function, which informs us about all signatures being received. We have to provide a webhook there, just a URL that is accessed by Skribble after all signatures are there. But it didn't work, and we did not have any error messages containing detailed information. So we asked our Skribble contact person, and then with your support, we were able to find out that it was just a misformatting of the URL, and we could identify this very quickly. And so this challenge also was contained.
Okay, cool. And yeah, we mentioned that we provide this API credentials and keys, to get access to the API itself. It's important to keep it safe and secure. How can you solve this with the Power Automate platform?
This is a very good question, which we are currently still discussing in our organization, because the Power Platform gives a lot of rights to the users. So once people are authorized to use an application, they can also look into the flows, see the logs of the past runs, and they can see the editing view. So we must make sure the secrets are never visible during the development process in the logs at any time. It is possible to use the Microsoft Azure Key Vault in Power Automate. This is also another ready-made block, which you can just introduce and then hide the inputs and outputs of this block, so everything will be hidden then. For other solutions of other Vault suppliers, maybe some extra work is necessary to do a custom flow which can handle the integration of other secrets. Also, we have to be compliant to our organization security guidelines, because otherwise we won't have the allowance to go live with our application.
Okay, so it seems pretty simple, this Power Automate. Anything the audience needs to know before they start to use themselves and with IP or in general?
Yeah, I would invest some time when you begin to develop on thinking about who will be the users, how do they access the application, and also very early get in touch with security experts from your organization, because they might already have processes or preferred tools which they use for example, secret management. And these need to be taken into consideration in the development process at an early stage. And you just have to talk to them. We kind of started quite late doing that, and now we learn that there's a lot of work behind it, behind just integrating one block into the flow and pressing go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything special or feature request or enhancement you would place to Skribble to improve this integration?
Yeah, one thing is the application I just presented you is really a custom solution made from scratch in our team. So we really use single HTTP request blocks to send individual requests to the Skribble API, and it's not very reusable. So if any other teams with another user story want to integrate this API, they have to make adjustment or copy our flow or do everything on their own. So it would be very nice to have a Power Automate block for Skribble, which works like a black box, where you just provide the input data of your use case, and the block itself will handle everything else. This would be very good to make the app more portable and more usable for other teams. And another thing I already mentioned is the monitoring of the usage of the API, because we think from a security perspective and also to learn how is it used, and is everything working fine with our flows? It would be very nice to have the server-side monitoring of the API usage by Skribble.
Okay, very good points. Thank you. Yeah, the broader integration with the Microsoft world, especially for this Power Automate platform, it's already on our radar. I think best is to stay tuned, so to follow our webinars on this topic. And thank you again, Fabian, for your great presentation. And now I hand it over to David to see if there are some Q&As.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much to both of you. So this time we have some questions popping up. They're coming in. So you already said quickly something about this one, Freddie. So Kevin is asking, is Skribble already listed as an official connector in the Power Platform?
No, as mentioned, not yet. That's part of this strategy to be on the listed one. Yeah.
Good. So we will keep you posted about this progress. Then we have another question. What if I just want to test the API or a plugin? Can I do this already in the free test phase? What if we need more than 14 days? Feel free to also chime in, Waldemar.
Yes, I think if you sign up during the testing phase of the business in our 14-day testing phase, you can create API keys on the level of demo. Afterwards, you can create in the admin section API keys for production and demo. What if we need more than 40 days? You can always talk to us, right? So there's a possibility to extend the free trials.
Yes, you can talk to us, or you could also, I mean, you have these monthly licenses in the Pro team, for example, so it costs like 50 euros per month to extend it by 1 month, but feel free to reach out to us. We're also going to show where you can find the option to create the API keys in today's sessions in a few minutes. We do have another question. Did you secure the callbacks somehow?
Is it a question for me? So secure callbacks, we recommend having, first of all, announce so a number used only once, which you recognize, right, in the URL, but that's up to the integrator. What we do, we have, if your endpoint you provide requests mutual TLS, then our callback will send you a mutual TLS handshake. So it has secured by a certificate and where you can check the domain and that it's coming from Skribble and no other source. Hope that answers your question.
So we have another question from Carl. In the monitoring, how do you do that? Did you build an own dashboard? So, I'm not entirely sure if the questions go to Fabian or us.
Yeah, from my side, the monitoring is like on our roadmap, on our wish list, but we don't have server-side monitoring of the API yet. So that we have no concrete implementation of a dashboard or an overview, which is doing alerts in case something happens.
Thank you very much. So it would be great if you can say if questions are directed towards Fabian from SBB or Skribble to clarify. Thanks, Fabian. We have a question. Do you plan to build an integration for the ERP system Odoo?
I may reply on this one. So we are working with a partner called BrainTech in this area. So there's this Odoo sign integration option. And I think best is to contact myself on this one to go further and to see how to proceed there.
All right, so we'll also post an email address later on the slides where you can reach out and then we can redirect you to Freddie.
Mm-hmm.
This question is about any experience with Business Central integration, workflow, co-signing an offer. Do we know anything here? So
Me?
if not, I think we have
No.
to follow up. Probably have to follow up, Hervé, and then can provide you with an answer. Hope that's okay for now. Then there was another question by Carl. Any integrations planned into Microsoft Word?
Yeah, that's part of this strategy with this Microsoft deeper integration. So there is an option with the add-ins that we are currently looking into, what we can do there. And also the Power Automate, that is the central platform, so that also Dynamics and the other Microsoft tools beside Word, so Outlook and Excel and Dynamics, so that they can be integrated in a global way, central way.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And then there was a question about the webinar, if it's being recorded. And yes, this is the case. Lina already answered in the comments. You might have seen it. So these are all the questions for this session. I will show you a few more slides. If you have more questions, please post them in the comments and we'll pick them up towards the end of this webinar. All right. So to get started, we heard it quickly before. You can create Skribble APIs within the product. So you will find this section in the Skribble admin area. And there's a little navigation point that is called API keys. So that's where you're going to find it very easy. I encourage you, since we have probably, of course, we're ending a bit early today. I encourage you to do this right after the webinar. Obviously, we all have blocked some time, so that will be a great opportunity to go there and create API keys and test it out. If you already use the API, or if you have questions during the sign up, you can reach out to our wonderful Happy team. So these are the people that will happily answer your questions. The contact is happy@skribble.com. So if you encounter any problems, if you have questions around the API, feel free to reach out and we can answer them there directly, or redirect you to Freddie or Waldemar if necessary. Then, last but not least, we encourage you, or hope you will stay connected. So there is going to be a survey for this webinar, because we would very happily like to hear your feedback to improve this format and make it more valuable to you in the future. So, for example, think, was the webinar too technical, or was it not technical enough? These kinds of things would be very helpful for us if you could take a few minutes to fill out the survey. So you can scan this QR code here, but we'll also send out an email after the webinar with the recording of the session, with a link to the API documentation, and also a link to this survey where you can give us some feedback. I see there is 2 more questions. Let me quickly bring them up before we end the session. So, validation of the signature, is this planned via API? Yes, something we didn't speak about today, but we do have, as you point out, Carl, we do have a Skribble validation service, and it's accessible through the API. That's also something we already offer today. So if you're interested in validating signatures, validating documents, reach out to us. Please also contact us at happy@skribble.com. We can set up the necessary steps for you to basically start validating all those signatures and documents as well. I spoke about it in the last product webinar. I think it's a very great opportunity to also check documents that have not been signed by Skribble. Obviously, we're going to check every document that has digital signatures according to all standards that exist today. So validation of signature via API, please reach out to us. Very happy to set something up for you to try and use it. And then I have this question: how you handle the problem if the webhook notification does not work? Maybe the connection is down. Will the webhook receive a message again?
Yes. what happens is the webhook doesn't call once. It tries 10 times with exponential delay, right? It tries to, after 5 seconds, after 10, 20, 30, so on. So 10 times. And what we just introduced yesterday was a new endpoint in the API where you just can query, hey, what happened to my webhook, and receive all the error messages we see, like the IP was not reachable, the HTTPS handshake was failing, the URL was rejected. So again, it's repeated 10 times, and now you have the chance to see why it failed.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm going to show this message from Katrin as well. Thank you so much for the valuable session. Great use case of SBB. I can only second that. So thank you very much to everyone here, Waldemar, Freddy, and especially also Fabian, to showcase a very concrete integration from SBB. And I also want to thank all the helpers in the background, Lina, Simeon, and Antonio, that made it possible today to have this session as smoothly as it went. So that brings us to the end of today's API session. Again, please give us your feedback. Use the time until lunch to create some API keys to start the process. And if you have questions, reach out to us. We're always very happy to help you. Thanks a lot, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, David. See you.
Thank you, everyone.